Let's go Dolphins! This season will expose everything about this franchise. No more excuses. No more hiding behind potential. No more maybe next year. Either this team develops a real identity under Hafley's leadership in this new era, or the football world will continue to treat Miami as a weak team that can't handle pressure. And believe me, there are already people in the NFL expecting the Dolphins to completely collapse this year. But here's the craziest part. The last time Miami received so little respect from the league, something unexpected happened that longtime Dolphins fans will never forget. What I'm about to tell you will completely change your perspective on the season. But before we continue, make sure you've already clicked the like button if you still believe the Miami Dolphins can surprise the NFL in 2026. And I want all optimistic Dolphins fans to comment right now, I still believe in Miami. Let's see how many true fans are still supporting this team, no matter what happens this season. Now let's get directly into it. One of the biggest shocks from the schedule release was discovering that the Miami Dolphins received 0 primetime games this season. None. No Sunday Night Football. No Monday Night Football. Not even a Thursday night appearance. And the craziest part? The Dolphins are grouped with teams like the Raiders, Titans, Jets, and Cardinals, franchises many analysts believe could end up competing for top draft picks instead of playoff spots. That alone tells you exactly how Vegas and the national media currently view Miami heading into 2026. But here's where things get interesting. The last time the Dolphins had no primetime games was back in 2008. And what happened that year? Miami shocked the league and won the AFC East. Now, nobody is saying history automatically repeats itself. But Dolphins fans know football has a funny way of creating unexpected stories when everybody counts you out. And honestly, that might become the fuel this team desperately needs. Another massive topic surrounding this schedule is the brutal travel situation Miami will face this season. The Dolphins are projected to travel over 27,000 miles, making them one of the most traveled teams in the NFL. That's not a small detail. This team already has one of the toughest opening stretches in football. 3 of the first 4 games are on the road, including back-to-back West Coast trips against the Raiders and the 49ers. And this is where we're going to discover what this Dolphins team is truly made of. Because nobody actually knows what Miami is right now. Seriously. Nobody knows if this roster will become a gritty, physical football team under Hafley. Nobody knows if Malik Willis can stabilize the offense. Nobody knows if the defense will finally develop the toughness Dolphins fans have been begging for during the last few seasons. The uncertainty is everywhere. One moment you can look at the roster and convince yourself this team could fight for a wild card spot. The next moment you stare at the schedule and wonder if Miami could start the year 1-3 or even 0-4. And let's be honest, Dolphins fans, those first 4 games are absolutely brutal. You open against the Raiders, then immediately travel into a dangerous matchup with San Francisco before returning home to face Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes could be waiting for Miami in that game, and even if he somehow misses it, the Chiefs remain one of the toughest teams in football regardless. If Miami somehow escapes that opening stretch at 2-2, I honestly think fans will feel optimistic about the direction of the franchise. Because that would prove this team can survive adversity early. But there's another fascinating storyline here that fans are already talking about nonstop. Tua Tagovailoa is coming back to Miami. The preseason finale against the Atlanta Falcons suddenly became one of the most emotional games on the entire schedule because Tua will return to Hard Rock Stadium wearing another uniform. Think about that for a second. For years, Tua represented hope for this franchise. He represented stability after decades of quarterback uncertainty. Some fans defended him through everything. Others criticized him constantly. But now he returns as an opponent, and the atmosphere inside that stadium could become incredibly emotional. Will Dolphins fans cheer him? Will there be mixed reactions? Will emotions completely take over the building? That game suddenly feels much bigger than preseason football. And honestly, I think the NFL knows exactly what they're doing placing that matchup there. Meanwhile, the rest of the schedule does not get easier. The Dolphins still have difficult games against Buffalo, Cincinnati, Detroit, Chicago, Green Bay, and the Chargers later in the season. And one thing that keeps coming up repeatedly is physicality. Can this Dolphins team finally become the type of roster that punches opponents in the mouth instead of folding during difficult stretches? That question may define the entire 2026 season. Because talent alone isn't enough anymore. Dolphins fans have seen talented rosters before. What this organization needs now is identity, toughness, consistency, discipline. And maybe this difficult schedule is exactly what forces Miami to either grow up fast or completely collapse before midseason even arrives. That's why this schedule release feels bigger than usual. This isn't just about wins and losses anymore. This is about discovering whether the Miami Dolphins are finally building something real for the future, or whether another rebuild could be waiting around the corner. And this is where things start getting really dangerous for the rest of the league, because the more you analyze this schedule, the more you realize something important could happen very early in the season. If the Dolphins survive that opening stretch mentally, emotionally, and physically, this team could become far more dangerous than outsiders expect. But if things start collapsing early, the pressure around this franchise is going to explode almost immediately. And Dolphins fans already know how brutal the media becomes whenever Miami struggles. That's why these opening games are going to tell us everything about this football team. Not just talent-wise, mentally, emotionally, physically. Because there's a massive difference between being a flashy football team and being a battle-tested football team. And for years now, one of the biggest criticisms surrounding Miami has been exactly that. Fans have watched this team struggle against physical opponents. They've watched games spiral out of control after adversity hits. They've watched promising seasons suddenly disappear once injuries or pressure started building. But now, the Dolphins are trying to create a completely different identity. That's why so many eyes are on Halfley right now. Can he actually transform this team into one that fights back? Can he make Miami tougher? Can he build a roster that doesn't panic when facing elite competition? Because let's be honest, Dolphins fans, look at the teams on this schedule. San Francisco plays physical football. Kansas City knows how to close games. Buffalo has dominated Miami at key moments. Detroit hits you in the mouth for 4 quarters straight. Green Bay remains dangerous. Chicago suddenly looks much more complete. This isn't a soft schedule. This is a survival test. And maybe that's exactly what the Dolphins need. One thing that stood out during the discussion around the schedule was how uncertain almost every matchup feels right now. Nobody truly knows what the Raiders will become. Nobody knows if the Bengals start hot or cold. Nobody knows whether the Patriots suffer a Super Bowl hangover or come back angry and focused. And honestly, that uncertainty works both ways. People around the NFL don't know what Miami is either. That's the fascinating part. The Dolphins could become one of the biggest surprises in football, or one of the biggest disappointments. There doesn't feel like much middle ground anymore. And one of the most overlooked parts of this entire situation is the fact that Miami may actually benefit from getting those difficult West Coast games out of the way early. Instead of dealing with exhausting late-season travel chaos, the Dolphins can settle into that trip before the season fully speeds up. That matters more than people realize. A lot of teams hate those mid-season West Coast stretches because they completely destroy routines and preparation. Miami at least has time to organize things before week 1 truly arrives. But there's another huge storyline fans are beginning to discuss quietly. What happens if the Dolphins actually start winning early? Think about how quickly the national narrative could change. Right now, Vegas projects Miami near the bottom of the league. Analysts continue treating the Dolphins like a rebuilding franchise with no real playoff hopes. But imagine this scenario for a second. Imagine Miami opens the season 2-2 after surviving games against San Francisco and Kansas City. Suddenly people start paying attention.